They folded the family flag over my memory like I had died. Except I hadn't. I just refused to salute their silence. But here's the thing, when you bury someone alive, they dig upward. And when I surfaced, I wasn't looking for approval. I came back with power. They said she didn't belong there. Not because she broke the law, but because she refused to stay silent. Inside that courtroom, cold floors, sharper looks, everyone seemed to already know who the villain was supposed to be. Her. The failure. The dishonor. The family disgrace. She wasn't called to testify. She wasn't part of the legal team. She wasn't even supposed to be in the room. And yet, the air shifted the moment she walked in. A man in a dark suit leaned in toward the judge. Whispered something. The judge raised an eyebrow, scanning the gallery. Her gaze landed on the last row, where a woman sat still, silent, spine unshaken. "Wait," the judge said, squinting. "Is that?" Then louder. "Is that Logan Rae McKinley, the governor of California?" Gasps. Pens dropped. Cameras clicked. Her sister's face, stone pale. Her father, across the aisle, sank slightly in his seat. They thought she disappeared. They thought she'd never come back. They never imagined she'd walk in through the front door of justice, wearing power like armor. "I'm Logan Rae McKinley. I'm 34 years old. And this isn't a comeback story. This is a reckoning." 15 years earlier, the house on Patriot Lane smelled like lemon polish and ironed uniforms. The walls were lined with medals, framed flags, and pictures of Frank McKinley in full Marine dress blues, always mid-salute. Discipline wasn't encouraged, it was expected. Weakness was sin. Emotion, a defect. Logan Rae McKinley had been raised like a soldier, even before she enlisted. She woke at 0500, made her bed with hospital corners, and memorized every word of the Marine Corps code before she turned 12. Her father, Colonel Frank McKinley, retired, believed that raising warriors was the only way to survive in a world designed to break you. Her mother, Diane, nodded and prayed, but never questioned. And her older brother, Brandon, was everything a McKinley should be, stoic, decorated, obedient. Logan followed the same path. She enlisted at 21, assigned to a logistics unit in Iraq. She was quiet, efficient, and invisible in all the right ways, until the night she wasn't. Her CO was drunk. She was alone, sorting supply logs. He cornered her. What happened next was never about misunderstanding, it was about control. And Logan, for the first time in her life, broke rank. She filed a report. It should have meant protection. Instead, it detonated her entire world. The inquiry turned hostile fast. Witnesses disappeared. Statements got lost. Then came the real blow. Brandon submitted a character statement. He called her emotionally reactive, easily misinterpreting commands. Worse, he vouched for the CO. Logan's voice cracked when she confronted him behind the barracks. "You know what he did, Brandon." Brandon's jaw didn't move. "I know what's at stake." "You lied to protect him?" "I protected the Corps." "You're just one soldier." "You're my brother," she hissed. "Then act like a McKinley." She never forgot that line. 3 weeks later, she was dishonorably discharged for disruption of unit cohesion. The paper was handed to her like a death certificate. When she flew back to Fayetteville, she didn't call ahead. She didn't have to. Her key no longer worked. She knocked. Colonel Frank McKinley opened the door, stared at her in silence for several seconds, then stepped aside, not to let her in, but to toss her duffel bag onto the porch. "You turned your back on your unit," he said, flatly. "I was assaulted." He didn't flinch. "You disrespected the uniform." "I respected myself." "That's not how we survive." "I don't want to survive like this," she whispered. He stepped back inside. Diane appeared in the hallway behind him, hands clutching her Bible, eyes wide and brimming, but she said nothing. She just closed the door. The lock clicked. Logan stood on the porch, not crying, not moving, just staring at the brass nameplate that read, "The McKinleys, Faith, Family, Freedom." All three had just shut her out. She took her bag and walked into the night, not looking back. That was the last time she saw that house, until the day she walked into that courtroom as someone they never saw coming. Logan Rae McKinley didn't drive away from Fayetteville. She couldn't. She didn't have a car, or a job, or even a plan. Just a duffel bag, $63 in cash, and a train ticket to Sacramento, California, paid for by a friend of a friend who owed her a favor from deployment. She didn't ask why. She didn't say thank you. She just left. The ride west was a blur of gray windows and stale air, the rhythmic clatter of the train wheels matching the pulse in her chest. She didn't cry. Not because she wasn't hurt, but because crying still felt like insubordination. The habit of silence was hard to kill. Sacramento was colder than she expected. In every sense. Her first week, she slept in the waiting area of the Greyhound terminal, legs curled over her duffel, boots still laced tight. She tried to find shelter, but most veteran centers wouldn't take dishonorable discharges. She wasn't a veteran in their eyes. She was a stain. On day 8, she found a short-term gig as a night shift janitor at a medical clinic downtown. The manager didn't ask about her discharge, just if she could work in silence. She said yes. The job paid $10.50 an hour. Enough for a shared room in a crumbling Victorian house with 4 strangers and a leaky ceiling. Her bed was a mattress on the floor. The heater never worked. Her roommates smoked indoors and slammed doors after midnight, but no one asked questions, and that was what she needed most. Each night, she scrubbed linoleum floors until her fingers cracked, headphones in, volume low, sweeping memories into the mop bucket. By morning, she was invisible again. Her discharge papers stayed folded inside the inside flap of her duffel bag, creased, stained, but never torn. It was the only thing from her past she didn't burn. She kept her uniform too. Not to wear, but to remember. On a rainy Tuesday, a year into this ghost life, she opened the small plastic case that once held her medals. The Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, the Good Conduct Medal, her name engraved beneath. Each one still gleamed, untouched. She stared at them for a long time. Then she walked into the alley behind her building, lit a match, and dropped it into the box. The fire flared orange against the wet bricks. When it burned out, she kicked the ashes into the gutter. That night, she started using a different name on job forms, L.R. McKinley. Not to hide, but to become someone else, someone untraceable, someone no longer haunted by chain of command. At the clinic, a nurse once asked if she'd been in the military. Logan didn't flinch. "No," she said. "I just walk like someone who's always being watched." She stopped standing at attention when people yelled. She stopped asking permission to speak. But she never stopped scanning exits. Some parts of her training were tattooed on the inside. When her fingers stopped shaking, she began writing again. Just a few lines a night, mostly about silence, about what gets buried. She didn't know it yet, but she was building something solid, layered in pain, but sharper than anything her family ever taught her. She had lost her name, her home, and her uniform. But she had also survived them. And soon, survival wouldn't be enough. Soon, she'd start fighting back. Logan Rae McKinley wasn't looking to be found. She wasn't chasing redemption, justice, or even closure. Most days, she just wanted to get through her shift, keep her hands busy, and stay out of anyone's spotlight. But power has a strange way of tracking down people who try hardest to disappear. It happened on a Thursday night, just past 2 a.m. The clinic had emptied out, the lights buzzed fluorescent, and Logan was wiping down the front desk when she heard shouting in the lobby. A woman, mid-30s, disheveled, was arguing with a security officer. Her accent was thick, her words broken, but the desperation was universal. She clutched a toddler to her hip, eyes wild. The guard, firm but flustered, waved a clipboard in her face. "Ma'am, you need to sign or leave. It's already processed." "She doesn't understand you," Logan said from behind him. The guard turned, annoyed. "She's been told 3 times. She doesn't understand what she's signing. You could be waving her off the system, or worse. She's not your problem." Logan stepped forward, quietly but firmly. "If she's in the building, she's someone's problem. And if you make her sign something she doesn't understand, that's your problem." The silence that followed wasn't loud, but it was definitive. The guard backed off. Logan led the woman and her child to the break room and sat with them for nearly an hour, using what little Spanish she remembered and a translation app to make sense of the paperwork. It was a hospital transfer form, nothing urgent, but the woman had thought she was signing deportation consent. She cried quietly into her son's hair when she realized the truth. Logan stayed with her until dawn. She didn't think anything of it. Just another night. Just another mess that needed mopping. But someone had been watching. The following week, Logan was summoned to a small office on the 4th floor of the building. She assumed she was getting written up for stepping out of her role. Instead, she found a sharply dressed woman in her early 50s sitting behind the desk, reading a printed incident report. Her name was Nina Wu, director of Pacific Haven, a nonprofit that provided legal support and transitional housing for undocumented families. "You're not a social worker," Nina said. "No, ma'am. You're not an advocate." "No. But you knew how to de-escalate. You stayed calm. You knew what mattered. I've cleaned enough chaos to recognize it when it walks in." Nina studied her for a long moment. "Ever thought about doing something other than cleaning up after people?" Logan crossed her arms. "Like what?" "Like helping them before they break." The job wasn't glamorous. It started with filing cases, translating forms, passing out water bottles at outreach events. Logan didn't complain. She watched, listened, asked the right questions at the right times. At night, she enrolled in community college. Policy and ethics. Administrative law. She wrote papers under the name Logan Rae McKinley. No one knew who she'd been. Only what she brought to the table now: structure, clarity, force. The kind you can't teach, only earn. 3 years passed like that. Quietly. Efficiently. She rose through the ranks not because she was loud, but because she made rooms quieter when she spoke. One day, a colleague whispered, "You've got the spine of a general." Logan smiled faintly, without looking up. "No," she said. "I've got the memory of a soldier." It started with a voicemail. The number was unfamiliar, the voice immediately not. Too measured. Too clean. "Logan, it's Brandon." A pause. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and that's fair. But Mom's sick. Really sick. She's asking for you." She didn't delete it. Not right away. She let it sit in her inbox like a ticking clock. 3 days later, it was followed by a call from Diane McKinley herself. Her voice was thinner now, soft, almost fragile. It trembled in a way Logan had never heard before. "I don't expect anything," Diane said. "But I miss your voice." No mention of what had happened. No apologies. Just a flicker of vulnerability, wrapped in the same quiet that once shut doors on her. Against every instinct, Logan booked a flight to Fayetteville. She hadn't been back in over a decade. The moment she stepped out of the airport, the air felt heavier. Like it remembered her. Like it never forgave. The house on Patriot Lane looked the same. White siding. Trimmed hedges. The brass plate still read, "The McKinleys, faith, family, freedom." She stood at the porch for a long minute before knocking. The door opened before her hand touched the wood. Diane stood there in a cardigan too big for her frame, her eyes welling up before any words came. Frank McKinley lingered behind her, stiffer, grayer, but still all steel. Brandon arrived last. He didn't speak at first, just nodded like they were running into each other at the grocery store. Dinner was strange, civil, quiet. Too quiet. Logan kept her coat on. They made small talk. Brandon mentioned the city council seat she'd recently been appointed to in Sacramento. Diane complimented her hair, even though it was cut military short, same as always. Frank barely looked up from his plate. Then it came. Brandon cleared his throat. Listen, there's something else. Logan raised an eyebrow. The DOJ is opening an inquiry, he said. An incident from back in my last deployment. She stared at him. You mean the CO you defended? I didn't know how bad it was. And now they're making it a political case. Logan said nothing. I need a character statement, he added. Something to show I'm not the man they're painting me as. She pushed her fork aside. Diane placed a hand on her wrist. Just something simple. A few words. Family stands together. Logan looked around the table. At the mother who closed the door. At the brother who buried her with his silence. At the father who watched it all, and called it discipline. I was cast out for telling the truth, she said quietly. And now you're asking me to lie? Brandon's voice hardened. It's not lying, it's protecting. She stood. No. It's the same thing it's always been. Protecting image. Protecting rank. And I don't belong to that anymore. You're still a McKinley, Frank said flatly. She turned to him. Then maybe that name needs to mean something different. She left before dessert. No hugs. No promises. No closure. Back in her hotel room, there was a letter waiting, delivered by hand. Typed. Clean. No signature. A legal draft of a character affidavit, with her name already filled in at the bottom. It hadn't been a request. It was a setup. And just like that, the second betrayal landed harder than the first. Logan Rae McKinley didn't respond to the affidavit. She didn't rip it up. Didn't return it. She just stared at it for a full hour, reading every word like it was written in smoke. Then, without a sound, she slid it into the hotel room's desk drawer and left it there, sealed in silence. 3 days later, the subpoenas hit the press. Federal inquiry. Allegations of misconduct and conspiracy to suppress evidence in a military tribunal. And Brandon McKinley's name sat right at the center. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a rupture, one that echoed all the way from Fort Bragg to Capitol Hill. The calls began. Press. Former colleagues. Even state party officials. Everyone wanted Logan to comment, clarify, choose a side. She said nothing. Until she saw one particular headline. Governor's family at center of military scandal. Not Governor Logan Rae McKinley. Not veteran advocate. Just her bloodline, dragged into the spotlight like an open wound. That night, she booked a flight back to North Carolina. No staff. No security detail. No statement. Just herself, and a seat in the last row of a courtroom that once would have never let her in. The courtroom was colder than she remembered. Long wooden benches. White fluorescent lights. American flag in the corner, faded like a memory someone forgot to keep sacred. She wore a dark blazer, no pins, no insignia. Her posture was military, but not by design. She had never unlearned that. Brandon sat at the defense table, stiff in a tailored suit. His eyes scanned the gallery once, then again, until they landed on her. He froze. She didn't blink. The judge entered, Honorable Justice Eleanor Pruitt, known for her spine and her intolerance for theatrics. She called the room to order, adjusted her glasses, and began scanning the witness list. Then, she paused. Her gaze slid over the gallery again, narrowed slightly. Is that? She squinted. A beat of stillness passed. Is that Logan Rae McKinley, the governor of California? Gasps fluttered. One journalist stood up too quickly, nearly dropped his recorder. Phones came out. A quiet ripple of chaos spread like a dropped glass in a silent hall. Brandon's face drained of color. Frank McKinley, seated behind his son, sat perfectly still. Diane reached for her pearls, knuckles white. But Logan didn't move. She didn't wave. She didn't acknowledge the judge's question. She simply remained seated, spine straight, eyes forward. Justice Pruitt cleared her throat and resumed the docket. The proceedings rolled on, but the energy in the room never settled. Every few minutes, someone glanced back. A few whispered. One reporter tried to lean toward her aisle, only to be blocked by a bailiff. Logan stayed until adjournment. She didn't speak to Brandon. Didn't make eye contact with her father. As people filed out, she stood, stepped down the aisle, and exited the room without a word. Outside, a cluster of cameras waited, already tipped off. Microphones lunged. Flashes strobed. She stopped once, long enough for one clear shot. Then said, flatly, "I'm not here to rescue anyone. I'm here to remind them I survived." And with that, she disappeared back into the crowd, no motorcade, no entourage. Just the weight of her presence and the silence that followed it. The headlines wouldn't die. Every outlet had a take. Brother of governor faces federal scrutiny. Family legacy tainted by truth. The McKinley name on trial. But Logan Rae McKinley refused to respond. She didn't schedule a press conference. She didn't post on social media. She didn't even return the voicemail from her chief of staff who warned her that the optics are slipping. Because this wasn't optics. This was history unraveling in real time. She spent the following evening walking alone through a community park in downtown Sacramento, hoodie up, hands in jacket pockets, boots scuffing pavement that remembered how to carry her. It was quiet here. A good kind of quiet, the kind she never had growing up. Her phone buzzed once. Then again. She checked. 2 missed calls from Diane McKinley. One from a restricted number. Then a text. "He's still your brother. He needs you." This is bigger than what happened back then. Bigger than what happened back then. As if the first betrayal were a footnote. As if silence could be recycled into favor. Logan turned the phone off. The next morning, her office received an official request from Brandon's legal team. Not a demand. Not a threat. Just a suggestion, a strategic character endorsement that could, theoretically, tilt the public perception. It wasn't even addressed to her. It was sent to her office assistant. Cold. Formal. Bureaucratic. That afternoon, she walked into her office, locked the door, and opened the drawer where she'd placed the original affidavit. The one they left in her hotel room in Fayetteville. She placed the new request beside it. Same formatting. Same signature line. Different dates. Different desperation. Then she made a call. Not to Brandon. Not to Diane. But to a quiet contact she had inside the Department of Justice, someone she once mentored, someone who owed her nothing but respect. "I'm not asking for an outcome," Logan said. "I'm asking for accuracy. Dig where it hurts." The woman on the other end understood. That was the thing about power when you'd earned it, you didn't have to shout to use it. Later that night, as her staff finalized the talking points for the week, Logan stepped into the hallway, leaned against the wall, and let her head fall back for just a moment. No tears. No rage. Just stillness. A junior aide approached timidly. "Governor, about the McKinley case, do you want us to draft a distancing statement?" Logan shook her head. "No. Don't distance me." The aide blinked. "No. Let them use the name. I just don't want them to own it." The words hung in the air like judgment rendered. Because Logan Rae McKinley wasn't seeking revenge. She didn't need to see her brother fall. She didn't need her father humiliated or her mother begging. That would be too small. Too temporary. She just needed to make sure the name no longer protected the wrong people. And that the truth, finally, spoke louder than the silence that built them. The auditorium wasn't grand. No chandelier. No velvet curtains. Just rows of plastic chairs, a makeshift stage, and a single podium under a flickering fluorescent light. The kind of place where things didn't look important, but what happened inside often was. This was a town hall for women veterans. Survivors. Fighters. The forgotten ranks. Logan Rae McKinley hadn't planned to speak. She was just supposed to open the event, say a few lines, smile for a photo, and exit stage left. But then she saw the banner. Honor Beyond Uniform. And beneath it, taped to the wall, were photos. Faces. Dozens of women in fatigues, some smiling, some solemn. Some alive. Some not. One caught her eye. A woman from her old unit. Gone now. Logan stepped to the podium without looking at her prepared notes. She didn't need them. She cleared her throat. The room hushed. I used to think honor was something you could lose, she began. That once it was taken from you, that was it. You were done. Disqualified. Unfit. She scanned the room slowly. But that's a lie. They don't give you honor. You earn it. And no one, no commanding officer, no tribunal, no family, gets to strip it away. People leaned forward. Years ago, I was told I disgraced the Corps. I lost my title, my rank, my uniform. But I never lost what I stood for. Because that never came from a patch on my chest. It came from who I chose to be when no one was watching. She reached beneath the podium and pulled out a small black box. Quiet gasps rippled through the audience as she opened it, revealing a silver Marine Corps emblem, her original pin. The one she kept buried at the bottom of her duffel bag. The one they said she didn't deserve. This, she said, holding it between her fingers, has been dead weight for too long. She struck a match. The sound was soft, but the silence around it made it thunder. She held the flame to the ribbon lining the box. It caught. Flickered. Then burned slow and steady, like something deliberate. A few people stood. Some covered their mouths. Others reached for their phones, but Logan shook her head. No pictures, she said gently. Some things deserve to die in private. When the fire burned out, she let the ashes scatter across the podium. She didn't sweep them away. She left them there, so they'd be seen. This wasn't destruction, she said. It was release. A woman in the front row whispered, "Damn right." Logan smiled, the corners of her mouth trembling just enough to betray what it cost. Let them keep their medals, she said finally. We'll build something they can't burn. Applause broke out, not thunderous, but heavy. Weighted. Real. She stepped back from the podium, lighter than she had been in years. Not because she'd let go of the past, but because she finally stopped letting it follow her. That night, she walked alone down Capitol Avenue under a deep blue sky. No escort. No armor. Just the quiet assurance that what she'd burned wasn't her honor. It was their hold on it. A week later, Logan Rae McKinley stood in the sunlit lobby of a modest community center in South Sacramento. No media. No press badges. Just a circle of metal chairs, a folding table of donuts, and a handmade paper sign that read, "Voices after service, healing in the open." She wasn't the guest of honor. She wasn't even on the schedule. She'd just come to listen. But near the end, an older woman, gray at the temples, voice cracked from decades of silence, raised her hand. "If they ever come back," the woman asked, different, "if they say they're sorry, what do you do with that?" The room stilled. All eyes turned toward Logan. She stood slowly. You let them tell their story, she said. If they're ready, let them speak it. But you don't rewrite yours to make space for it. The woman nodded, tears forming. Logan crossed the room and placed a hand on her shoulder. We don't get to choose our blood, she added, but we get to choose what we pass down. And maybe that's the point. Outside, the late afternoon sun dipped low behind the trees. Logan stepped into the light, her boots pressing soft against the pavement. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Because healing wasn't about pretending the wounds never happened. It was about walking forward with them wide open, and daring the world to look.